Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the soft, snow-drenched silence of Paris, a city that somehow becomes even more magical when winter cloaks its rooftops and muffles the hum of scooters. You're not rushing anywhere. You're not on some guided tour with a clipboard-wielding guide named Sylvie. Nope. You're just here, one breath at a time. You stand on a quiet street, tucked somewhere between the 5th and 18th arrondissements. Not that it matters. Your boots crunch against thin ice, and the snow is just beginning to fall. Not the frantic kind that slaps you in the face, but the dreamy sort. Big, slow flakes drifting like tiny parachutes, catching on your scarf and lashes. It's the kind of snow that makes even your problems whisper. And sure, your fingers are slightly frozen already, but Paris doesn't care. Paris is giving you the full cinematic welcome. It's the kind of night where it's hard to believe the world exists outside of this block. Street lamps glow like melted honey through the mist. A single bicycle leans against a wrought iron fence, dusted with snow like someone forgot it in a fairy tale. And the scent? It's that heady Parisian combo: fresh bread, distant roasted garlic, and something floral you can't place. Maybe jasmine? Maybe someone's cologne? Or maybe it's just your imagination warming up. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Bonus points if it's also snowing where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a few slow steps down the cobbled street, your breath visible in the chilly air. Snow crunches underfoot, and every sound seems dialed down to 30%. Even your footsteps feel polite. You pass shuttered patisseries, their signs hand-painted and their window displays wrapped in tinsel. One features a gingerbread Eiffel Tower that's leaning slightly to the left. Honestly, it's a better replica than most souvenir ones. A tiny white dog wearing a puffer jacket trots across your path, then disappears into a courtyard. You half expect it to whisper something prophetic before vanishing. Paris will do that to you. The line between logic and whimsy blurs the second you inhale that frozen, buttery air. Across the street, a florist has left a bouquet of tulips outside, already catching flakes. It's a quiet rebellion against the season. Flowers blooming in defiance of snow. A handwritten note is taped to the crate. Pour qui en a besoin ce soir, for whoever needs them tonight. You kind of do, but you let them be. Somehow, that act of kindness feels more healing when left untouched. As you walk, a bit of historical trivia bubbles up. The Paris snow of 1954, when temperatures dropped so low that the Seine began to freeze over. Children ice skated where boats usually floated. Historians still argue whether it was nature's tantrum or just a cold snap amplified by faulty gas heating in post-war homes. Either way, it added a frosty chapter to Parisian folklore. You pause near a wrought iron gate, where a plaque on a weathered building reads, Ici vécut Camille Claudel, sculptrice. You run your gloved fingers over the engraved letters. Claudel, Rodin's muse, lover and rival, sculpted emotion like it owed her money. She lived in the shadows of greatness until the world finally caught up. A quirky tidbit? She reportedly hid some of her best work in her own floorboards, fearing it'd be stolen, or worse, ignored. As you wander farther, snow begins clinging to your coat in earnest. You tilt your head up and let the flakes land on your face, instantly melting on your cheeks. The rooftops above are all frosted angles and chimney silhouettes, looking like paper cutouts against the plum-colored sky. Up ahead, a narrow alley forks to the left, barely wide enough for a Fiat, but clearly marked with a whimsical street name, Rue des Neiges Perdues, Street of Lost Snows. It might be a prank, it might be real, but it's the kind of thing that makes you smile without needing a reason. And so, you turn. The alley opens into a tiny square lit by golden lamps. A carousel, yes, a real, functioning carousel, is slowly turning with no one aboard. The music is faint, just a few tinny notes drifting into the cold. The horses are elaborately painted, their saddles dusted in snow. One looks directly at you, and for a second, you feel like it's challenging you to a duel. You chuckle softly. Fatigue is a funny thing. It blurs the lines between magic and memory. You sit on a nearby bench. It's cold, but not unbearably so. You tighten your scarf, watching the snow swirl in the carousel's slow orbit. And right there, with the hush of the city all around, and the scent of roasting chestnuts from someone's invisible cart, you feel that rarest of things, utter stillness. Somewhere far off, a church bell chimes midnight. You don't flinch. Instead, you watch a lone figure cross the square, an old man in a long coat, pushing a bicycle with a wicker basket full of something fragrant. Lavender, bread, possibly ghosts? You'll never know. You close your eyes for a moment. The cold kisses your eyelids. Your thoughts slow, sinking with the snowflakes. Gentle, quiet, unhurried. And just as you open them again, a gust of wind sends a swirl of snow in spiraling flight, right toward the steps of Montmartre. And suddenly, that's where you're headed. You head toward Montmartre, one careful footstep after another, following the cobblestones as they begin to slope upward. The snow thickens now. Not a storm, just more confident. The flakes seem bigger, bolder, as if Paris is really leaning into the aesthetic. It's the kind of snow that sticks in your hair and clings to your eyelashes, the kind that makes you feel like a supporting character in a French art house film, probably titled La Nuit des Pas Silencieux or Snow, Croissants, Regret. Montmartre isn't just a hill. It's a time machine that smells like espresso. You pass shuttered cafes with hand-scrawled chalk menus promising things like tartines maison and soupe à l'oignon. There's a set of accordion stairs ahead, worn from centuries of souls making similar pilgrimages upward. Each step seems to whisper a story. Lovers sneaking home at dawn, artists returning with paint-stained hands, pickpockets and poets, and the occasional mime. Yes, even those need rest. You climb slowly, fingers trailing the black iron railing, slick with ice. The steps creak under the weight of time, and your very real, very tired legs. A sign of the times. Someone has graffitied a QR code onto one of the stone walls. It leads to a playlist titled Ghosts of Paris. You don't scan it, but you think about it. Halfway up, you pause to catch your breath and glance back. Paris stretches out behind you like a snow globe that's just been shaken. The rooftops glow under a patchy sky, and the Eiffel Tower glints in the far distance, blinking like it's winking. It's far enough away to feel dreamy, close enough to remind you that the entire city is still quietly alive. On your left, a door opens unexpectedly, and a rush of warmth and laughter spills into the street. It's a private home, soft piano music, clinking glasses, someone telling a story too loud in Italian. You wonder what it's like to live in a place that makes strangers dream. Then again, aren't you doing that right now? Back on the stairs, your boots crunch through a crust of new snow, and your mind wanders to history. Montmartre used to be outside the city walls, literally the Mountain of the Martyr, named after Saint Denis, who allegedly walked around here carrying his own decapitated head. Historians still argue whether this was metaphor, myth, or just some really committed performance art. Either way, It's a wild way to get a hill named after you. You reach a narrow landing lined with little balconies and iron gates. A street lamp buzzes faintly above, casting shadows that sway like slow dancers. Behind one frosted window, you spot an easel, a smear of crimson paint, and a sleeping cat curled on a stack of canvases. It doesn't get more Montmartre than that. A quirky tidbit for your mental scrapbook? In the 1890s, a group of artists here formed an actual self-declared republic called the Free Commune of Montmartre. They had a mayor, issued fake passports, and claimed independence from the rest of Paris, all mostly as a prank. But for a time, Montmartre was its own little country of weirdos and dreamers. You'd fit right in. The steps finally flatten into the Place du Tertre, a small square surrounded by cafes and easels, even now in the cold. A few painters are still out, bundled in scarves, quietly sketching by lamplight. One catches your eye and nods in greeting. He gestures to an empty chair beside him, but you politely decline. You're not quite ready to be drawn yet. You're still forming. And there she is, Sacré-Cœur. Perched at the highest point in Paris like a whipped cream castle, her white domes seem to glow in the snow. You walk toward her slowly, your breath catching. Not from cold, but from that feeling you get when something exceeds your expectations and defies logic all at once. She's more than a basilica. She's a lullaby built in stone. You take a seat on the front steps, brushing snow from the bench. The cold seeps through your coat, but you don't move. Not yet. The city spreads out beneath you like a sigh. Somewhere below, a car horn honks, followed by immediate shushing, as if the city itself is trying to stay quiet for this moment. You glance up at Sacré-Cœur again. Built after the Franco-Prussian War as a kind of national apology/peace offering, she's been a symbol of hope, guilt, pride, and faith all at once. Her construction was controversial. Some thought it was beautiful, others called it architectural propaganda. But even now, historians still debate its meaning. Maybe beauty doesn't need a clear origin story. Maybe it just needs snow and silence. You let your eyes wander across the stone. Tiny icicles hang from the arches. A few pigeons puff up on the ledges, looking personally offended by the weather. The twin towers rise like sleepy sentinels. A slow wind picks up. You tighten your scarf again and lean back slightly, gazing upward. The snow's falling thicker now. Flakes drift in lazy zigzags, like they're uncertain whether they should land or just keep floating. You feel that too, that in-between sensation, like the city has paused just for you, like you could sit here for hours and no one would interrupt. Then you notice the sound. Faint music from somewhere inside the basilica. Not an organ, not quite a choir, just a voice, warm and low, humming something ancient. Or maybe it's your imagination tuning to the right frequency. Either way, it's enough to give you goosebumps. And not just from the cold. Another gust of snow swirls through the square, lifting a paper bag into a mid-air waltz. It pirouettes, then settles at the foot of a statue. The words printed on it? Il faut rêver. You must dream. No argument here. You stand, stretch, and take one last look at the glowing city beneath you. Then you turn away from Sacré-Cœur, heading down a side street so narrow you have to turn sideways. The snow follows, like it's curious where you're going next. Spoiler alert? So are you. You slip out of the narrow lane behind Sacré-Cœur and find yourself wandering deeper into Montmartre's quieter arteries. These are the streets not featured in glossy travel brochures. They're softer, humbler, lined with cracked shutters, antique lamps, and walls scrawled with decades of graffiti that probably made more sense when it was first written. A warm glow spills across the snow from a little storefront up ahead. The sign reads, Librairie de Minuit, Midnight Bookstore. It's so absurdly on the nose that you check the doorframe for hidden cameras. But no, it's real. Or at least real enough to have foggy windows, a crooked doorbell, and a small cardboard sign taped to the glass. Oui, on est ouvert. Même ce soir. Yes, we're open. Even tonight. You push the door open and a bell tinkles. Of course it does. And the scent of aged paper, lavender, and something faintly toasted wraps around you like a cashmere hug. The place is small, cluttered, and absolutely enchanting. Books stack in precarious towers. Floorboards creak. A black cat with one white paw sits atop the cash register, staring like it's judging your life choices. Bonsoir, comes a voice from behind a stack of encyclopedias. You respond with your own sleepy bonsoir, unsure whether the speaker is the owner, a customer, or perhaps a ghost who reviews books on Goodreads. You begin to browse, fingertips grazing worn spines. There's no system here. History books wedged next to 1980s cookbooks, ancient philosophy rubbing elbows with graphic novels. It's chaos. Cozy, literary chaos. One title catches your eye. Les Oubliés de Paris, The Forgotten of Paris. Inside is a collection of short stories based on historical events too obscure to make it into mainstream museums. You flip to a page about the Midnight Match Girls, a group of teenage girls who went on strike in the 1860s after being forced to work nights without candles, because apparently Parisian factory owners were both cheap and completely missing the irony. Historians still argue whether this strike actually happened or if it was just an urban legend to scare future bosses into installing light bulbs. You tuck the book under your arm and keep browsing. In the corner of the shop, a chair sits beside a fireplace, a real one, crackling merrily like it has nowhere better to be. A half-drunk cup of something steamy rests on a nearby stool. You consider sitting just for a moment. The cat narrows its eyes, as if giving you permission but silently warning you not to steal its spot later. As you sit down, your body thanks you. The fire kisses your knees. You lean back, and the chair makes an appreciative creak. You imagine yourself in the 1920s, when Paris was the center of the creative world. Hemingway, Gertrude Stein, James Baldwin, all probably stomping through the snow, drunk on philosophy and cheap wine. Or just drunk, really. The storekeeper shuffles closer. They're wearing a scarf as thick as a python and fingerless gloves. You like stories? They ask. You nod. They smile. Good. This place, it remembers stories people forget. They disappear again, leaving you with the fire, the cat, and a growing sense that time has gotten fuzzy. You open the book on your lap and flip to a random page. This one tells the tale of a lost manuscript, rumored to have been written by Victor Hugo after a bad absinthe trip. Apparently, he wrote an entire novella about a sentient bridge that falls in love with a gondolier. It was promptly disowned by his family, who insisted Hugo was merely experimenting with form. The manuscript vanished shortly after his death. Some say it's hidden behind a wall in Montmartre. Others say it was used to patch a roof. A creak from upstairs catches your attention. You glance up and notice, for the first time, that the bookstore has a second floor. A spiral staircase winding up behind a curtain of velvet. The shopkeeper doesn't stop you. Neither does the cat. You climb. Upstairs, things feel older, dustier. The lighting is warmer but dimmer. Here, the books seem heavier, as though their stories haven't been told aloud in decades. You pass a shelf labeled Livres qui rêvent, books that dream. One book, bound in cracked red leather, sits alone on a table. No title. You open it and find a handwritten dedication inside. To the night walker who reads without asking questions. You're halfway through a poem about snow falling inside a locked theater when something outside the window catches your eye. A snow-covered rooftop just across the alley. And on that roof, a man sits with a large sketch pad, drawing by candlelight. No coat, just a sweater and fingerless gloves like the shopkeeper. He's sketching Sacré-Cœur with impossible detail, the domes glowing like they're lit from within. You blink, and he's gone. The book slips closed in your hands. Maybe you dozed off. Maybe this bookstore is a portal. Either way, your legs are ready to move again. You descend the staircase and return the book to its table. The cat stretches luxuriously and yawns like it's known you forever. The shopkeeper waves from behind the counter, now buried behind a new stack of books. Outside, the snow has thickened to a slow cascade. The world feels a little quieter, a little dreamier. You head out again into the frozen night, heart warmed by paper and firelight. And next, well, a cafe wouldn't hurt. You drift back into the cold, your skin tingling from the quick contrast, fire-warmed bookstore to wind-swept street. Paris welcomes you back with a hush, the kind of late-night silence only snow can engineer. Every step muffled, every breath visible, every storefront closed except for one, a glowing cafe with fogged windows and a chalkboard that simply reads, "Vin chaud and gratitude." You don't hesitate. You've earned this. Inside, it's small. 6 tables, 2 people, 1 barista wearing a sweater that says Liberté, Égalité, Caféiné. The place smells like cinnamon, orange peel, and stories whispered across tabletops. You peel off your gloves and take a seat by the window, where the glass is warm from the inside and cold from your fingers. The barista gives you a knowing nod and disappears behind the counter. Within minutes, a steaming mug of vin chaud, hot spiced wine, appears in front of you, garnished with a curl of orange and a whole star anise like a mini sea creature lounging on the surface. You take a sip, and it's like the liquid equivalent of a lullaby. Warm, deep, a little mischievous. You glance around. The only other guests are an older couple sitting close, talking in low French too fast to catch, though you pick out toujours and pas encore, always and not yet. That feels about right for tonight. As you settle in, the snow outside continues its quiet choreography. The Eiffel Tower twinkles again in the distance, now barely visible through the shifting curtain of white. You think of all the people asleep in Paris right now, dreaming their tiny dreams in crooked apartments, unaware that someone like you is out here appreciating it all for them. Here's your historical hit for the hour. Back in the 1600s, cafes like this were revolutionary, literally. They became hubs for political plotting and caffeinated philosophy. Historians still argue whether the Enlightenment itself would have happened if Paris hadn't been so completely obsessed with sitting around drinking coffee and arguing about metaphysics. If anyone ever says you're wasting time in a cafe, just tell them you're reenacting a historical movement. Your mind drifts. You wonder how many writers sat here before you. Or maybe not here exactly, but somewhere like this. You picture Simone de Beauvoir scribbling in the margins of a philosophy journal, or Albert Camus, sipping absinthe and silently judging your lack of existential despair. The barista slides a small plate toward you. It holds a single Madeleine. No charge. Just vibes. You smile, remembering how Proust wrote about Madeleines triggering a whole flood of childhood memory. You take a bite. It's soft, citrusy, warm, like it just hatched. Sadly, no tidal wave of memory washes over you. You just really enjoy the cookie. A postcard is taped to the wall beside your table. Faded and yellowed, It features a snow-covered Montparnasse from 1938, with a short note written in looping script. Il neige ce soir. Le monde dort, mais moi, je regarde. It's snowing tonight. The world sleeps, but me? I watch. The fringe fact you didn't know you needed. In the 1800s, people used to hire professional snow stompers to make elegant patterns on paths in rich neighborhoods. Wealthy families would wake to elaborate floral or geometric designs traced in fresh snow, all done before dawn. Part art, part flex, all ridiculous. Your mind wanders again. What if you were one of those anonymous souls tasked with patterning the city? What would your trail say? Would you write a message in looping cursive across the cobblestones? Or just draw a giant sleepy face next to the Seine? Outside, a figure hurries by, wrapped in a bright red coat and carrying a cello. You blink, and they're gone. Paris is always doing that to you, offering strange cameos like a surrealist movie. You half expect the cat from the bookstore to stroll past wearing glasses and reading the paper. The barista clears the older couple's cups and hums something soft. An Edith Piaf melody, if your tired brain isn't lying to you. You let your head rest against the window pane. It's cool, but not uncomfortable. Your breath fogs a small circle in the glass. You write your name in it with a fingertip, then draw a tiny star. For some reason, this feels deeply important. Another sip. The wine is cooler now, but still good, like a story that's aged just enough to lose its urgency, but none of its flavor. The lights above you flicker faintly. You're not sure whether that's the wiring or just your eyelids. You glance at your watch. Time has gone all bendy again. You could have been here 30 minutes or 3 hours. Either way, it's time to move. You thank the barista, who smiles like someone who knows all the city's secrets and has no intention of sharing. The cafe door jingles behind you, and once again the snow folds around you like a downy coat. You pull your scarf up higher and start walking. This time, no plan. No destination. Just streets that look like magic and legs that are willing. Around the corner, you pass a tiny hotel whose neon sign flickers ouvert in green and gold. A man inside is playing the piano in the lobby. You don't stop, but you slow down, listening to the ghost of his music. A few blocks away, you hear laughter. Giddy, distant, the kind that belongs to people who don't have anywhere to be. You round another corner and find the street opens up into a plaza you don't recognize. Snow has piled into soft dunes. No footsteps. You're the first one here. A statue stands at the center. You can't quite read the plaque, but the figure looks like a poet mid-recital, snow caught in the curls of his bronze hair. Someone's placed a scarf around his neck. You laugh. Paris always finds a way to accessorize. Then, from nowhere, a smell. Roasted chestnuts. You follow it to a vendor under a wide umbrella, surrounded by a cloud of sweet smoke. They nod at you and offer a paper cone. Still warm. You sit on a stone bench, pop a chestnut into your mouth, and for a moment you are not a tourist or a walker or a dreamer. You are a small, grateful creature cradled inside the heart of a sleeping city. And that's enough for now. You dust your gloved hands together after the last chestnut and stand, body warm from the inside out. The snow has eased into a gentle drift, like it's decided to let you have a break. The streets are empty in that sacred temporary way, where the absence of footsteps feels like permission to claim the moment as your own. You pass a glowing sign ahead. Passage des Panoramas, one of the oldest covered arcades in Paris. You duck inside, brushing past velvet curtains that seem too grand for a place so quiet. Inside, it's all tile floors and golden lamps, stained glass signs hanging overhead for shops you're almost certain haven't changed since 1880. The air smells faintly of leather and ink. You walk slowly, letting your fingers skim over windows displaying vintage postcards, marbled notebooks, and calligraphy pens arranged like museum pieces. In one shop, you spot a collection of pressed flowers labeled with call numbers, like a floral Dewey Decimal System. Another sells nothing but antique maps, the kind where countries no longer exist, and sea monsters guard the margins. Historians still argue whether this very arcade played a direct role in France's earliest postal network. Some say messengers once used these passages to avoid rain, while transferring handwritten dispatches between nobles and revolutionaries. Others claim that's just romantic nonsense made up by over-caffeinated interns at the tourism board. Either way, it feels true enough tonight. You pause outside a tiny shop with gilded lettering. Cartes curieuses. Curious cards. Inside, the walls are lined with tarot decks, some modern, some clearly older than the internet. A woman with long silver braids sits behind the counter, shuffling slowly. She glances up, catches your eye, and smiles without surprise. "You look like someone who has questions," she says. You chuckle. "Don't we all?" She waves you in. "One card, no charge, just curiosity." You sit across from her, breath fogging the glass case between you. She fans the deck and waits. You reach forward and pull a card from the center. It's Le Fou, the Fool, a figure with a knapsack, standing on the edge of a cliff, a little dog barking at his heels. She nods once. "Ah, the traveler, beginning without knowing where the path ends." She leans in. "It suits you." You're not sure whether to feel seen or slightly mocked, but you smile anyway. You thank her and step back into the arcade. Further down, you hear a low hum, soft jazz drifting from somewhere unseen. You follow the sound, which leads you to a narrow alcove where a man in a trench coat plays a soprano saxophone under a flickering gaslight. There's no hat for tips, no audience, just music. You stand there a while, no clapping, no recording, just breathing it in, note by note, like warm honey spooned into cold tea. The moment reminds you of something odd but true. During World War II, even as Paris was occupied, underground jazz clubs flourished. Jazz was technically banned, considered un-French by the Nazis, but that only made it more popular. Parisians danced harder, later, louder, using saxophones and syncopation as weapons of rebellion. The rhythm of defiance. You nod to the saxophonist, who returns your glance with a wink and shifts seamlessly into La Vie en Rose. Because of course he does. You exit the passage and find yourself near the Seine again. The water, a wide black ribbon reflecting scattered lights. You cross one of the smaller bridges, Pont des Arts, maybe, and stop midway to lean against the railing. The river flows beneath you, eternal and unbothered. Overhead, the sky's a deep navy. A few stars peek through the urban haze. You hear footsteps. Not behind you, beside you. A couple has stopped at the railing, too, murmuring in Italian, sharing earbuds as if the bridge is their private cinema. You smile and turn back to the water. Somewhere upstream, Notre Dame looms, cloaked in scaffolding, still healing, but beautiful in a wounded way. Open scholarly debate moment. Some researchers still question whether the cathedral's famed gargoyles were originally built for spiritual protection, or if they were merely functional rain spouts commissioned by an architect with a flair for drama. Either way, you'll never unsee them as brooding stone watchmen who are either deeply pious or deeply bored. From the bridge, you spot a houseboat drifting slowly down the Seine, lit from within by golden light and a flicker of movement. A shadow passes behind the curtain. A cat, maybe, or a very lazy ghost. For a second, you envy that boat, always moving but never in a hurry. You continue along the riverbank now, boots crunching softly over compact snow. You find a row of benches, sit for a moment, and watch the world tilt slightly on its axis. A metro train passes across a distant viaduct, its windows glowing like a procession of fireflies. Your fingers trace a shape in the frost on the bench's armrest. A heart, barely there, almost gone. Another odd little fact. The original streetlights of Paris, those gas lamps that gave it the nickname City of Light, were installed not for beauty, but for control. Louis XIV wanted to reduce crime by eliminating shadows. But instead, he lit a stage. Parisians simply moved their secrets into the light and performed them with better costumes. You stand again. You're heading uphill now, toward the Latin Quarter. The buildings lean in closer here, like old friends whispering to each other over your head. The wind picks up, rustling trees bare but still beautiful. A street musician, bundled in scarves, strums a guitar outside a closed bookshop. His breath puffs clouds with each note. You pause to listen, drop a few coins in his case, and he nods in thanks. He begins playing Ne me quitte pas. You almost cry, but blame the wind. The buildings part ahead of you to reveal a modest plaza, empty save for a single street lamp and a tiny fountain frozen mid-drip. You cross it quietly, the silence so complete it rings in your ears. At the far end, a building with iron gates looms, the Pantheon, mausoleum of great minds, Voltaire, Rousseau, Curie. Tonight it sleeps under a layer of white, its columns softened by snow. No tourists, no tour guides, just stone and time. You sit on the steps, even though they're cold, and look up at the dome. You wonder if greatness feels different when it's buried. Probably not. Probably quieter, though. And then you smile again. Because here you are, not trying to be great, just trying to be still. And that's enough. The Pantheon rests behind you now, solemn and still, like a marble sentinel guarding centuries of stories. You descend the gentle slope of Rue Soufflot, your footsteps light, body guided by nothing more than instinct, and the faint promise of something lovely just around the bend. The snow has stopped entirely. In its wake, the world glistens, pavement shimmering like crushed crystal under the soft glow of amber street lamps. Paris, freshly powdered and unusually hushed, feels like it's waiting for someone to notice it. Lucky for Paris, you're that someone. You veer left, pulled by the vague memory of a square you once read about. Place de la Contrescarpe. A crescent of cafes tucked into the seam, where the Latin Quarter starts to feel like a small village. When you arrive, you find it deserted, except for a lone delivery bike leaned drunkenly against a lamppost and a spiral of cigarette smoke escaping from the fingers of a man seated outside Café Delma, ignoring the cold with the intensity of a true Parisian. You give him a respectful nod. He nods back, like you've both agreed not to mention that it's technically insane to be out here at this hour, especially for fun. You sit on a cold chair beneath the cafe's awning and order a noisette, a tiny espresso with a dash of warm milk. The waiter doesn't even blink. No one's ever surprised by your weirdness in this city. It's part of the charm. As your coffee arrives, your eyes catch a blue plaque mounted across the square. Ici vécut Ernest Hemingway, 1922 to 1923. This was once his neighborhood. He wrote and boxed and drank and wandered these very streets, sometimes all in the same evening. It's said he used to steal books from Shakespeare and Company, live off oysters and white wine, and walk the streets with his infant son bundled inside his coat. Historians still argue whether his early Paris years were as productive as he later claimed, or whether nostalgia made him a better editor than a writer. But tonight, the details don't matter. Tonight, the idea of Hemingway padding down Rue Mouffetard at midnight, chasing inspiration or an open bakery, feels exactly right. You sip the noisette slowly. It's hot and a little bitter, the way you like your coffee and most of your thoughts. Across the square, a streetlight hums faintly, as if warming its own filaments. A gust of wind rattles a chalkboard menu, and a swirl of snowflakes lifts like sugar stirred into cream. And suddenly, without reason, a pang of joy sneaks up on you. Not because of anything specific, just because you're here. Because this moment exists. Because somewhere someone is asleep and dreaming of Paris, and you're out living it on their behalf. Another quirky fact: the Latin Quarter's winding streets are based on the original Roman road grid, designed over 2,000 years ago. Paris was once Lutetia, a Roman settlement where students, merchants, and soldiers mingled in markets that still echo in the neighborhood's shape. Even back then, people got lost here. It's sort of the point. You finish your coffee and head south, turning on to Rue Monge. The buildings grow narrower, older. You pass a closed boulangerie, where rows of croissants sit behind frosted glass like little golden soldiers awaiting breakfast duty. A sudden bell chimes. Not a church, but a clock tower hidden behind the silhouette of an ancient lycée. Midnight. Paris has officially passed into tomorrow. You're not tired. Your body feels light, like the rules of exhaustion have been temporarily suspended, or at least rescheduled. You continue your quiet prowl and soon find yourself facing the Arène de Lutèce, the ancient Roman amphitheater embedded in a modern park. The gate's ajar. Of course it is. Nothing's locked in Paris at midnight except emotions. You step inside. The arena stretches wide, a ghostly bowl of stone. Snow has settled evenly across the benches and stage, untouched like a frosted cake no one has dared slice. You walk down into the center, stand where gladiators once did, where actors, orators, and philosophers once drew crowds. You raise your arms just for fun. The echo answers you back. Here's your historical moment. This amphitheater was lost for centuries, buried under the city, rediscovered only in the 1860s during Haussmann's massive renovations. Historians still debate whether the arena ever hosted real gladiatorial combat, or if it was more of a public performance space. Either way, tonight you're its only audience and its only act. You sit on a snowy bench and let your breath frost the night air. Somewhere beyond the walls, Paris dozes. But here, it's like you've stepped sideways into a pocket of time that no longer bothers with clocks. You lay back on the stone. It's cold, but not unpleasant, like a marble bed cooled for summer. Above you, the stars have multiplied. For the first time tonight, the clouds part completely, and the sky stretches wide and velvet. Orion, Cassiopeia, maybe a satellite pretending to be a star, and then, as if cued by some ancient stagehand, it begins to snow again. This time, slower, dreamier. The flakes fall directly into your face, your lashes, your open mouth. You laugh quietly, snow melting on your tongue like ghost candy. You think of all the people who've sat here, who've loved here, who've fought or performed or just passed through, unaware they were leaving footprints for someone like you to find. There's something humbling about that. You close your eyes. Just for a moment. When you open them, it's quieter still. The snow has coated your coat and scarf like dust on an old book cover. You stand slowly, stretch, and exit the arena, leaving behind only your footprints and a smile carved into the surface of the snow. You head east now, where the streets narrow even further, and the scent of early baking begins to creep into the air. Somewhere nearby, someone is preparing pain au chocolat, and you feel like you might actually be able to find them. Your path leads you to a stone archway marked Rue Rollin, its cobbles wet with melted snow, shining like obsidian. You're not following a plan anymore, just scent and instinct and the promise that the next turn will be even better than the last. And in Paris, it usually is. You trail along Rue Rollin, feet brushing over wet cobbles, scarf tucked high as the wind picks up just enough to keep your senses awake. The street is narrow, barely wide enough for a scooter to squeeze through, and on either side, shutters hang slightly ajar like sleepy eyelids, as if the buildings are half watching you pass. It's the kind of alley that feels like it should lead to a secret, so naturally, you follow it. As you round the next bend, the smell hits you. Not the romanticized version. This isn't perfume or roasted chestnuts or some imaginary bakery dream. This is butter. The real thing. Salted, sizzling, unapologetically rich. And sugar, caramelizing, melting into crisp golden layers. Your stomach makes a sound usually reserved for cartoons. You look up and see it. A tiny corner boulangerie-pâtisserie with the lights still on. The windows are fogged, but through the haze you glimpse trays stacked with croissants, brioche, and long golden brown baguettes that could double as fencing swords in a bakery-themed duel. A handwritten note on the door reads, "Back in 5. Warm yourself by the oven if you must." So you do. Because when a Parisian baker invites you to loiter near an oven, you accept. Inside, the place is all warmth and flour. Baskets of baked goods line the shelves, and a small radio plays something soft and string-laden in the background. Debussy, you think, although historians still argue whether he actually composed his most famous melodies in quiet cafes or in the kind of glorious mess only a genius could tolerate. You lean against a warm tile wall near the back, just far enough not to seem creepy, but close enough to catch the scent of something new. Almond. You peek around the corner and see a tray of galettes des rois, golden and glistening, each with a tiny porcelain fève hidden inside. Ah yes, the cake of kings, a pastry tradition older than Fashion Week and arguably more competitive. People take their slice like a gamble, praying not to chip a molar on the tiny treasure inside. Suddenly the bell jingles. A short man with a magnificent mustache enters through a side door, dusted in flour like he just emerged from a baking avalanche. He raises an eyebrow. "Ah, you found the warmest spot in Paris." You grin. "Lucky guess." He laughs and gestures toward the front. "Anything you like, consider it midnight diplomacy." You eye the offerings. The croissant is the obvious choice, but then again, you didn't come all this way for obvious. You point to a pain aux amandes. He wraps it gently in waxed paper and slides it across the counter like a dealer at a very French casino. "Bon courage," he says. It's what Parisians say when they don't know what else to wish you. And somehow, it always fits. You thank him and step back outside, pastry still warm in your hands, fingers barely resisting the urge to tear it open like a winning lottery ticket. You walk slowly now, taking your first bite beneath the arch of Rue Monge. The crust shatters delicately, the almond paste inside rich and smooth, like marzipan on a vacation. You actually stop walking, just to let the flavor have your full attention. One bite in, and you're pretty sure this could be the reason humanity invented ovens. You keep walking, heading down toward the banks of the Seine again, weaving through streets that look familiar now. The river reappears beside you, quiet and glassy. A few boats drift silently, their lanterns glowing like floating lanterns in a bedtime parade. As you walk along the quay, you pass a series of closed bouquinistes, those little green bookstalls perched along the walls, filled with old paperbacks, postcards, and vinyl records. Most are shut tight for the night, but one is cracked open slightly, and the faint sound of Edith Piaf drifts out. You peek in. No one's inside, just a kerosene lamp flickering beside a stack of books. You scan the spines. Sartre, Balzac, a tattered copy of Le Petit Prince, a first edition of Tintin with a cracked spine. Someone has placed a photo of a cat dressed as Napoleon on the shelf, for reasons that require no explanation. Fun fringe fact. The bouquinistes are technically considered part of the city's UNESCO World Heritage designation, making Paris possibly the only city in the world to protect second-hand booksellers the way others protect castles. You leave a euro coin on the ledge, a tip for whoever left the music on, and move along. Your boots crunch against the salted walkways as you cross the Île Saint-Louis, the smaller of the two islands in the middle of the Seine. Here, the buildings are regal but modest, each with high windows and little balconies just wide enough for a chair and a potted plant to discuss the weather. You pass a door with iron handles shaped like lion heads, and a painted mailbox with tiny flowers sketched in the corners. The details are what get you. This city is built from them. You stop at the edge of the island and lean against the stone parapet, looking toward Île de la Cité and the towering silhouette of Notre Dame, still stoic despite everything. Construction scaffolding clings to her sides like braces on a smiling teenager. She's healing, slowly, but standing proud, unshakable. A boat glides by beneath you, the soft churn of water the only sound. For a moment, you imagine you're in some time loop, repeating this same moment every night, never growing old, just drifting from bridge to bridge on a circuit made of stories and snow. Another historical nugget. In the 1600s, the French crown once considered draining parts of the Saône to reveal its mysteries. Plans were drawn, funding allocated, then abruptly scrapped, because someone realized Paris needed water more than secrets. Still, the idea lingered. Historians still speculate whether any hidden vaults, catacombs, or lost relics might sleep beneath the riverbed. You like that? You like that the unknown can exist just below your feet, quiet and undemanding. You turn away from the river, finally feeling the hint of sleep beneath your ribs. Not enough to stop, but enough to notice. Ahead lies the bridge to Le Marais. But you take a moment longer, standing beneath a flickering street lamp as the snow begins again. Thinner now, like powdered sugar falling through a sieve. And the thought returns. You're here. You made it. You're in Paris on a snowy night, eating almond pastry crumbs off your mittens, under stars older than the map you passed an hour ago. If there's a better way to spend a night, you can't think of it. You step onto the bridge connecting Île Saint-Louis to the right bank, your boots tapping rhythmically on the wet stone as the Seine whispers beneath. The snow tapers to a dusting mist, like the city is exhaling after a deep dream. Lanterns strung along the quay shimmer in watery reflections, dancing in the current. You pause at the apex of the bridge, turn around, and glance back at the twin islands, Notre Dame and its quiet neighbor glowing like a pair of ancient lighthouses in a velvet sea. And now, welcome to Le Marais. Unlike the curving chaos of the Latin Quarter, Le Marais is crisp, geometric, and elegant, like someone ironed the streets before laying them down. The air here smells faintly of spice and soot, cinnamon from some closed falafel shop mingling with the last of the bakery smoke clinging to your coat. The architecture sharpens, too. Renaissance facades, limestone arches, and window shutters painted in exacting shades of navy, sage, and oxblood. It's tidy, but not boring. Think Paris with a perfectly trimmed beard. You follow Rue de Rivoli for a few blocks before veering off into the narrower side streets, where the past tends to hang around longer. Soon, you stumble upon Place des Vosges, arguably the oldest planned square in Paris, and definitely the most symmetrical. A perfect square, surrounded by matching red brick townhouses topped with sloped slate roofs and peppered with dormer windows. Cardinal Richelieu once strolled these walkways. Victor Hugo lived here, in an apartment still preserved like a historical snow globe. Historians still debate whether Place des Vosges was truly the birthplace of Parisian café culture, or if it simply played host to enough gossipy nobles for long enough to count. Either way, tonight it's empty, except for you and a couple of stubborn pigeons who clearly missed the memo about bedtime. You walk under the covered arcades, boots clicking softly against time-worn flagstones, past antique galleries and boutique shops, all shuttered now, their window displays dimly lit like stage sets after curtain call. One shop catches your eye, not because of what's in it, but because of what's not. A mannequin stands in the center of the window, stark white and headless, draped in an 18th-century-style coat made entirely from newspaper pages. A single rose sits in the front pocket. No sign, no explanation. Just a statement. Paris does that sometimes. You shrug and move on, resisting the urge to leave a business card just to match the vibe. You exit the square through an iron gate and head north on Rue Vieille du Temple. The nightlife pulse starts to re-emerge here, not loud but insistent. A jazz riff spills from a tiny bar across the street, its door open just wide enough for the music to escape like steam from a kettle. Inside, you catch a flash of gold saxophone and the glow of whiskey glasses, but you don't stop. Not yet. Tonight isn't about the inside world. You pass a building with a plaque commemorating a Jewish family deported in 1942. The snow has softened its edges, but you brush a hand against the brass anyway. Paris is full of these reminders, stories pressed flat into walls, waiting for someone to notice. Tonight, that someone's you. Now a quirky tidbit. Le Marais sits partially on marshland, hence the name, and some basements here are technically below the water table. That's why many buildings have curious smells and persistent damp corners. They've simply decided to live with it. In Paris, even the mildew is historical. You veer left onto Rue des Rosiers, the heart of the Jewish quarter. It's mostly closed, but the ghosts of sandwiches past linger in the air. The famous falafel stands are shut tight, but the scent remains, a warm blend of cumin, coriander, tahini, and fried dreams. You make a mental note, return in daylight, preferably hungry. A few doors down, a cat hops up onto a window ledge, stretches and blinks at you like you're interrupting something sacred. It yawns. You nod respectfully and carry on. A light snow begins again, just as you reach the edge of the Marais. It falls so gently you hardly notice it landing, just the occasional tickle on your cheeks or the subtle hush it adds to your steps. Your next destination comes into view, the Musée Carnavalet, dedicated entirely to the history of Paris. It's closed, of course, but the courtyard is just visible through the wrought iron gate. Statues peek out like bashful ghosts, Robespierre's empty stare, Voltaire's puckish smirk, an anonymous revolutionary holding a broken musket. You think about all the revolutions Paris has weathered, some bloodier than others, the storming of the Bastille, the Paris Commune, the May 1968 student protests. Historians still argue whether Paris survives by evolving or by pretending not to notice change until it's too late to object. You sit on a nearby bench, pastry crumbs long gone now, and listen to the city breathe. It inhales through distant sirens and exhales in the scrape of a broom on cobblestones. The occasional rumble of a passing scooter breaks the lull, but mostly, this is quiet. A quiet earned, not given. You let your eyes close for a moment. Not sleep, exactly. Just a rest. a checkpoint. When you open them again, you realize the night is deepening, but so is your calm. You haven't checked your phone in hours, haven't thought about emails or laundry or whatever vaguely threatening stack of envelopes you left unopened on your desk. Here, there is only now. And here, now is beautiful. You rise and stretch gently, neck popping in that oddly satisfying way that makes you feel slightly taller. You resume your wandering, following Rue des Francs Bourgeois, past more silent storefronts, graffiti murals, and a perfume shop with a single red light glowing in its window. It smells faintly of sandalwood and oranges. You don't need to be anywhere specific. That's the thing about Paris at night. It never asks for your destination, only your attention. Rue des Francs Bourgeois narrows as you walk, its elegance melting into something more lived in, more layered. The stone buildings lean in just a touch, and your boots scuff over uneven cobbles where centuries of footsteps have shaped the earth like a slowly thumbed page. Up ahead, a vintage lantern swings faintly above a wooden door. It creaks in the wind like it's sharing gossip. You pass a boutique with mannequins dressed entirely in black, as though mourning their own prices, and across the way, a closed hat shop with feathered cloches frozen mid-wink in the display. The glass is speckled with snow, and you're tempted to draw a little mustache on one of the faces. But you resist. Barely. Le Marais gives way now to a different tone. Not quite the grandeur of the Champs-Élysées, not the poetic chaos of Montmartre, but a place that sits between, like an ellipsis in the city's sentence. You follow that ... through Rue du Temple and into the quieter folds of the 3rd arrondissement. Your path takes a lazy curve toward the Conservatoire des Arts et Métiers, an old priory turned industrial museum, one of Paris's lesser-known treasures, but a time capsule of ambition. Inside rests a collection of strange machines and early prototypes, rusted automatons, old looms, half-dismantled orreries that once tried to map the heavens. Foucault's pendulum swings slowly in the rotunda, slicing time into visible truth. You can't go in, but you stand near the gates and imagine it. Gears ticking, models spinning, the scent of old oil and brass. Historians still argue whether this place sparked a true democratization of knowledge or just gave eccentric inventors a place to crash. Either way, it feels like sacred ground. Now, an oddly charming Parisian oddity. In the 1800s, a French engineer named Clément Ader built an early flying machine and secretly launched it here at night, some say from a nearby rooftop, scaring half the neighborhood cats and failing fantastically. His invention, the Éole, didn't soar for long, but he's still credited with planting the seed that led to French aviation. And possibly the legend of the Parisian Batman. You keep moving, snowflakes now tiny cold kisses along your jawline. You cut through Square Émile Choton, a little park, not much bigger than a city block. You cut through Square Émile Choton, a little park not much bigger than a city block. It's the kind of place Parisians pass daily and forget to name. But tonight, it feels like a private garden. The bare trees are laced with frost. Benches glisten with a sugar crystal sheen, and a statue of Gutenberg looks mildly offended to be outdoors. You nod politely anyway. The snow softens even his stern marble frown. Beyond the square, the silhouette of the Conservatoire National des Arts et Métiers towers over the rooftops like a Gothic grandfather clock. You can almost hear it ticking, not in minutes or hours, but in the quiet rhythm of curiosity. You pass a tall, barred window. Inside, a dim green glow suggests some ancient scientific display still humming, long after the last docent went home. The Rue Réaumur stretches before you, broader now, lined with a hodgepodge of Art Nouveau buildings and modern facades. Paris never quite picks a single design era and sticks with it. Instead, It layers styles like coats on a chilly night. Roman base, medieval tunic, Renaissance flourish, and always, always, a scarf of Haussmannian order on top. A delivery bike whirs past, its headlight cutting a sharp cone through the flurries. You wonder who's ordering sushi at midnight during snowfall, but then again, this is Paris. Someone probably once asked for escargot via carrier pigeon. You make your way west toward the Porte Saint-Denis, a triumphal arch not far from the original gates of medieval Paris. Built in the late 1600s to honor Louis XIV's military victories, it towers 24 meters high and looks like something out of a slightly arrogant fairy tale. Carvings of battle scenes ripple across its stone surface, frozen in eternal conquest. One winged figure stares out with such intensity, you feel slightly judged for not knowing your 17th century war history better. Historians still argue whether this monument genuinely rallied civic pride or just served as royal self-promotion on a grand scale. Probably both. Either way, it remains a dramatic punctuation mark on the page of the city. A less documented detail. Beneath the arch, there's a slight dip in the road where water always seems to collect. Even tonight, it glistens like a shadowy eye, blinking slowly at each passing step. Some say it's a remnant of the old moat system. Others claim it's just bad drainage. Either way, you skip around it. No need to test your boots' loyalty. You cross under the arch and continue along Boulevard Saint-Denis, the street quieting again. Most shops are shuttered, their iron grates pulled down like eyelids. But one window glows faintly with a purple light. An all-night florist, its display packed with tulips, orchids, and those tiny glass orbs filled with water and neon-dyed chrysanthemums. A man inside reads a paperback, a mug of something steaming beside him. You wonder if he's guarding the flowers or simply prefers their company. A woman walks past you, her dog trotting beside her in a small wool sweater, complete with tiny hood. The dog gives you a single glance, the kind that says, "We've both seen things." Then it trots on. You turn onto Rue d'Hauteville and then Rue du Faubourg Poissonnière, your pace slowing now. The snow has deepened, powder gathering in the edges of curbs and crevices. The city is sinking gently into its own hush. A small cafe sits at the corner, its outdoor chairs stacked like dominoes, the tabletops slick with frost. A chalkboard sign reads, in smudged cursive, Café fermé. Mais le cœur reste ouvert. Closed cafe. Open heart. You smile. Paris gets sentimental when it's sleepy. Further along, you pause by a second-hand bookstore, its interior barely visible through thick glass. The shelves are packed wall to wall, floor to ceiling, books stacked sideways and diagonally like some glorious literary landslide. A small sign inside reads, "Please knock. I am likely asleep, but I always wake for readers." Classic Paris. You don't knock. Not tonight. You simply press your palm against the cold glass for a second, like a whisper of gratitude, and walk on. Soon, the rhythm of the city changes again. You're nearing the edge of the 9th arrondissement now, brushing up against the dreamy, notorious rise of Montmartre. But don't worry, you won't climb the hill just yet. Tonight, you'll linger in the low streets a while longer, tracing the edge of the city's quieter thoughts. As you pass beneath another street lamp, the light catches the snowflakes in your hair. For a moment, you glimpse yourself in a darkened window, hatted, scarfed, a traveler made timeless by the cold. You've left no footprints behind. The snow swallows them as fast as you walk. Montmartre begins gently, almost shyly, just a subtle slope beneath your feet, barely a whisper of incline. But you know better. The hill will rise, and it will rise fast. For now, though, you walk along the outer edge, letting it coax you upward with the promise of hidden courtyards and crooked staircases. The snow keeps falling in perfect silence, soft enough to hear your breath, which now hangs in the air like a lazy ghost. You slip into Rue des Martyrs, a narrow street that climbs like a ribbon through one of the most beloved neighborhoods in Paris. In the day, it bustles. Artisanal grocers, flower vendors shouting prices, cafes hissing espresso steam. But now, it's yours alone. Street lamps halo the snowflakes and cast golden circles on bakery signs and shuttered fromageries. The scent of butter and yeast still lingers in the air, clinging to the memory of warm croissants. One bakery window still glows faintly. A baker inside, white hat askew, wipes down a counter with the slow deliberateness of someone who has baked all night and now belongs only to the silence. He doesn't see you, or maybe he does, and chooses to let you drift past like a dream. You pass a crumbling wall painted with layers of graffiti, tags, hearts, a black cat peeking out from behind a spray-painted moon. One message stands out. Tu es ici et c'est assez. You are here, and that's enough. It's exactly the kind of unsolicited emotional support you didn't know you needed. As the road climbs, your breath grows heavier, but not in an urgent way, in the way that reminds you you're alive. You round a bend and pause beneath an old gaslight, looking up toward the looming silhouette of the Sacré-Cœur. It sits atop the hill like a crown made of sugar and stone, its domes glowing faintly under the snowfall. You'll get there, but slowly. Paris wouldn't have it any other way. Now for your required dose of historical charm. Montmartre was once a village outside the Paris city walls, known for its windmills, vineyards, and general disinterest in being told what to do. It officially became part of Paris in 1860, but never really lost its rebellious streak. Artists, anarchists, poets, all came here to live cheaply and argue about paintbrushes. Historians still argue whether Montmartre's bohemian identity was an authentic cultural shift or a clever marketing ploy that got out of hand. Either way, it worked. It's hard to name a neighborhood more mythologized by postcards and past lives. As you pass a stairway carved between two buildings, you hear a soft rustle above. A ginger cat sits perched on a wrought iron balcony, tail flicking with practiced boredom. It watches you with the same gaze painters must have faced for centuries, part judgment, part muse. Halfway up the hill, you find yourself in front of Le Bateau Lavoir, or at least what remains of it. The original building burned down in the 70s, but it's been rebuilt to honor what it once was, the beating heart of modern art. Picasso lived here, so did Modigliani and Max Jacob. They shared cramped rooms, traded canvases for soup, and allegedly used each other's work as firewood on particularly cold nights. That's either friendship or artistic sabotage. Historians still debate. A plaque by the door bears Picasso's name in worn brass. You press your fingers to it, imagining how many others have done the same. How many nights like this passed before someone inside picked up a brush and made history by accident? Just up the block, you pass a tiny cafe, the kind with 3 tables and a chalkboard menu that changes depending on the owner's mood. The lights are off, but someone's left a half-full wine glass on the sill, rimmed in lipstick. It catches a single snowflake and swirls it in a melting circle. You decide not to ask questions. Paris is better that way. A curious tidbit. Montmartre once had its own vineyard, still does, technically, called Clos Montmartre. Planted in 1933 to stop developers from bulldozing the hill, it still produces a small batch of wine every year. It's famously not good. But locals drink it proudly because it tastes like defiance. As you continue your climb, the streets wind tighter. Rue Lepic curls upward like a lazy snake, lined with shuttered bistros and those blue enamel street signs that feel like souvenirs baked into the walls. On your right, The old windmill of Moulin de la Galette peeks through a fence. Not the Moulin Rouge, that's lower down and decidedly more sequined, but its older, slightly more introverted cousin. Van Gogh once painted this windmill. So did Renoir. Neither captured the feeling of being here at midnight in the snow, though. That part's all yours. The final stretch to Sacré-Cœur is a staircase. Of course it is. Paris loves stairs the way New York loves bagels, passionately, excessively, unapologetically. These steps are wide and worn, polished smooth by generations of breathless pilgrims and drunken poets. You climb slowly, not because you have to, but because rushing would insult the moment. Each step rises like a heartbeat. Behind you, the city spreads out in a quilt of glittering rooftops and fogged-up chimneys. It's breathtaking in that quiet, sneaky way that only shows up when you're too tired to resist. At the top, you arrive. Sacré-Cœur glows, all ivory and gold under the moonlight. It's quieter than you expected. No tourists, no chatter. Just the distant hum of the city below and the soft crunch of snow under your feet. You sit on the cold stone ledge, look out over Paris, and let it all settle. You've walked a city into your bones tonight. Tasted history, heard whispers from walls, made peace with silence. The bell tower doesn't ring. It doesn't need to. Time here is kept by footsteps, breath, and the falling snow. You linger at the top of Montmartre, letting the view seep into you like warmth through a thick coat. Below, Paris unfurls in soft gradients, rooftops peppered with chimney stacks, domes and spires peeking through a sea of slate gray and golden light. The snowfall mutes everything. Even the city's usual hum seems to pause in reverence. Behind you, the Basilique du Sacré-Cœur looms quietly, its creamy stone domes dusted with snow like a powdered sugar cake. It's both monumental and strange, an architectural outlier that never quite agreed with its neighbors. Built in the late 1800s as an act of penance after France's loss in the Franco-Prussian War, it was intended as a symbol of national moral restoration. Historians still argue whether it truly served as a spiritual balm or just a colossal guilt trip dressed in white. But tonight, it's just beautiful. You turn toward the side gardens, where a winding path takes you away from the crowds, if there were any. The lamplight filters through a veil of bare branches, and the snow beneath your boots crunches softly, rhythmic as breath. You follow the path down a gentle slope, your pace unhurried. Near the base of the hill, a gated nook houses a bronze bust of Dalida, the beloved singer whose voice once wrapped around the world like velvet. Her statue stands quiet under a halo of falling snow. People still leave flowers here, though tonight her pedestal bears only a light dusting of white and a few frozen petals. Rue de l'Abreuvoir curves into view, the most photographed street in Montmartre, and for good reason. It's pure cinematic charm. Gas lamps glow golden, ivy-clad facades sleep under snow blankets, and at the end, like a painting come to life, sits La Maison Rose, a tiny rose-colored cafe with green shutters and a habit of appearing on postcards. It's closed now, of course, but in the moonlight it looks like it's dreaming of the people who'll line up tomorrow for overpriced hot chocolate and filtered sunlight. You pause at the corner and exhale. The snow catches in the folds of your scarf and melts slowly, whispering warmth against your throat. You begin to descend the hill by way of Rue des Saules, which leads past the vineyard of Clos Montmartre. Remember that slightly terrible wine we talked about? The vines rest now under snow, thin stalks poking from the white ground like frozen question marks. Still, they stand. Still, they grow. Not far from here is Le Pen Agile, one of the oldest cabarets in Paris, A tiny stone cottage with a peachy orange front and faded signage, it was once the haunt of starving artists and philosophical drunks. Picasso used to sneak in here. He even painted the place. According to one persistent legend, he once traded a napkin sketch for a week of food and wine. Whether the owners made out better is still up for debate. You stop in front of the cabaret's wooden gate and imagine the sound of a violin drifting into the winter night. The crunch of dancing feet. Laughter rising into the dark. You could almost believe the party never really stopped, just dipped into a long intermission until someone walks by and remembers it. Your path now snakes toward the cemetery. Yes, a cemetery. But don't panic. Parisian cemeteries are different. Romantic, even. Montmartre Cemetery lies tucked beneath the city's surface, hidden behind stone walls and iron gates, its tombs layered like a forgotten opera set. Tonight, it's blanketed in a kind of hush you can feel in your bones. You walk the perimeter, not entering, just observing. Candlelit graves flicker here and there, probably tended by someone earlier in the day, still burning in quiet rebellion against the night. Statues lean over crypts, marble angels with snow in their hair. Somewhere in there lies Alexandre Dumas Fils, the playwright. So does Dalida. It's a resting place for performers and poets, for those who spoke loudly in life and whisper still through stone. A quirky fact while we're here: the cemetery is built over an old abandoned quarry. In fact, many parts of Paris sit above these subterranean veins. Tunnels, ossuaries, and silent corridors that snake through the earth. The catacombs, just a few arrondissements away, are only the tip of that eerie iceberg. Historians still argue whether these underground voids destabilized the city during the 18th and 19th centuries or simply gave it more room to breathe in secret. You drift along Rue Joseph de Maistre, walking past quiet windows, the kind that glow with blue TV flickers and silhouettes sipping tea. A cat watches you from behind frosted glass, its eyes twin moons in a cozy galaxy. The snow here is deeper now, undisturbed except by the trail your boots leave, though even that fades behind you, the powder filling your path like a gentle reset. You stop at a bench beneath a leafless plane tree. The bench is dry, shielded by a broken awning, and for a moment you sit, just to let your knees catch up with your thoughts. From here, the skyline of northern Paris stretches into gentle darkness. Antennas blink red. Distant headlights weave like fireflies. It's the kind of moment that feels too quiet until you realize your heartbeat has slowed to match it. You let your head tilt back and let snow kiss your closed eyelids. Maybe tomorrow you'll remember this as a movie scene or a dream, or something in between. A slow wind rises. The snow begins to drift sideways in long, lazy diagonals. A single bell rings in the distance. Midnight has slipped by. Paris breathes, and you breathe with it. You rise and begin walking again, heading now toward the back roads that lead from Montmartre down to Pigalle. The slope is gradual here, and the buildings lean in as if to whisper farewell. Your footprints trail softly behind you, a temporary signature on a timeless stage. You descend quietly from Montmartre, leaving the echo of your steps behind on those snowy stairs, now softened by the steady fall of fresh flakes. The hill fades into shadow behind you, and with each step downward, the world seems to thrum with a new kind of energy, less serene, more electric. The snow here is slushier, streets a little more alive. You're entering Pigalle now, Paris's famously flirtatious neighborhood, where even in winter, neon doesn't take a night off. You round a corner and there it is, the Moulin Rouge. It rises out of the gloom like a lighthouse for mischief, its red windmill twirling slowly, lazily, above a facade drenched in crimson glow, Snow gathers on the blades, melts, spins again. The theater is closed for the night, but its marquee still sparkles as if waiting for applause. You pause across the street, taking in its unapologetic glam. The original Moulin Rouge opened in 1889 and became the birthplace of the modern can-can. Feathers, fishnet, boots clicking through the slush. Shop windows are dark. A sex shop with mannequins frozen in awkward poses stares boldly into the night, its lights blinking like sleepy eyelids. But not everything here is loud. Pigalle has its quiet corners, too. You duck into one now. Rue André Antoine, a short alley that buffers the boldness with soft shadows and old facades. You pass an unmarked door that looks closed, but a wisp of jazz curls from underneath it. Live, low, and distant. You stand for a moment, absorbing the brushed cymbals and lazy trumpet lines. Music like that doesn't demand anything. It just exists. Cool, slow, and slightly melancholy like a soundtrack left behind by someone else's story. Further on, the road widens again, curving past theaters and cabarets, some defunct, some legendary. The air smells of damp velvet and cold metal. You trail your fingers along an iron gate just because it's there, the chill biting gently at your skin. You pass the Musée de la Vie Romantique, nestled at the foot of Montmartre. It's closed, of course, but in daylight, it's a lesser-known treasure. Georges Sand's house-turned-museum, full of dusty manuscripts and whispers of scandalous letters. Tonight it looks more like a haunted dollhouse, with frost-laced windows and shadows curled tightly inside. Historians still argue whether Sand's romantic life, famously full of lovers, pseudonyms, and defiance, was an act of feminist rebellion or personal chaos. Either way, she walked her path in boots and a top hat, and Paris never forgot her for it. Now the snow picks up again, thick flakes spinning like thoughts you haven't had time to process. You tuck your chin deeper into your coat and cross into the 9th arrondissement, following Rue des Martyrs once again. But lower now, nearer to where it meets the city's waking edge. It's quieter here, softer. Apartment windows glow yellow. Someone burns incense on a balcony above, the scent warm and clove-like. You pass a boulangerie with a tiny sign in the window. Pain de Main. Bread tomorrow. A promise, in lowercase. On impulse, you turn down a side street and find yourself in a pocket of stillness. It's the kind of alley you'd miss if you blinked. A string of fairy lights twinkle above. There's a scooter leaned against a wall, half buried in snow. A single glove rests on its seat, soaked and forgotten. And then, laughter. Faint but real. You follow it, drawn like a moth. Around a bend is a hidden courtyard, just wide enough for 3 or 4 tables and a single overhead bulb. A couple dances slowly beneath it, bundled in coats, their feet barely moving. No music, just movement. You don't intrude. You don't need to. You turn away with a smile and keep walking. You reach a quiet square, Place Saint-Georges, surrounded by handsome buildings with curved balconies. In the center, a statue of Gavarni, the cartoonist, stands wearing a snow hat that makes him look whimsically offended. A charming bit of trivia. Gavarni was one of the earliest illustrators to depict Parisian bohemians as we imagine them today. Mirthful, melancholy, constantly in debt. He gave the city a visual mythology it hasn't shaken off since. And why would it want to? You pause on a bench and check the sky. It's still snowing. It hasn't stopped. It may never stop. And that's okay. Your breath fogs in front of you as the minutes stretch. No rush now. You've passed through laughter and ghosts, velvet and graffiti. You've seen Paris perform and rest, whisper and sparkle. You stand again, muscles warm despite the chill. The streets are mostly empty. The city feels like it's tucking itself into bed, drawing the clouds close like blankets. And so you keep going. toward opera, toward the Seine, toward whatever corner the snow wants to show you next. The night isn't over. It's just in between chapters. The streets slope gently now, guiding you down from the frosted elegance of the 9th arrondissement toward the lavish, glowing heart of old-world opulence. Opera. You move slowly, not because you're tired, though your legs might be staging a quiet protest, but because the architecture demands your gaze. Golden statues rise into snowy halos above the Palais Garnier, its facade a confection of carved stone, Grecian columns, and flickering lanterns. The snow softens its grandeur, frosting the gold like a wedding cake left out in winter. You pause on the wide steps and let your eyes wander up to the figures frozen mid-flight. Muses, warriors, musicians, all caught in dramatic stillness. Built in the 1870s during the height of the Second Empire, the Opera House is one of Paris's most extravagant love letters to art, drama, and, frankly, architectural ego. The ceiling inside? Painted by Marc Chagall, swirls of color and emotion hovering above a chandelier so massive it once famously fell during a performance. That's not urban legend, by the way. A counterweight snapped in 1896 and killed a concierge sitting in the audience. Historians still argue whether that real-life tragedy inspired Gaston Leroux's Phantom of the Opera, or if he was just mining the city's deliciously gothic vibes. But tonight, there's no phantom. Just you and the hush of snowflakes tumbling from a charcoal sky. You walk around the building slowly, the iron railings slick with frost, the lamplight playing tricks on the polished stone. Across the street, you catch your reflection in the dark glass of the Galeries Lafayette. The department store is closed now, but its holiday windows remain illuminated, little dioramas of mechanical bears and spinning stars behind condensation-fogged glass. You lean in and watch a tiny train loop through a cardboard forest while fake snow falls in rhythm behind it. A soft chuckle escapes your lips. It's whimsical, sure, but also oddly touching. These windows are for children, yes, but tonight, they're for you too. And the tired delivery driver who paused to snap a photo, and the stray cat perched nearby on a heat vent, flicking its tail with imperial indifference. You drift inside the covered passage nearby, the Passage des Panoramas. Though most shops are shuttered, their signs still whisper promises. Stamps, antique postcards, miniature books, chocolate truffles wrapped in gold foil. You imagine yourself here in the 19th century, dodging chimney smoke and hat feathers, eavesdropping on someone reciting poetry in the corner cafe. These passages were the original Parisian malls, sheltered spots for flaneurs and lovers, for writers who needed to be seen not writing. A quirky little historical footnote. The Passage des Panoramas was the first place in Paris to install gas lighting. Back in 1817, it glowed like witchcraft, and people came just to gape at the science of it. Some claimed the light would damage their eyes. Others were too busy tripping over their own shadows, now newly visible after sundown. Historians still argue whether these arcades sparked a new culture of late-night urban strolling or simply let wealthy Parisians shop longer, without worrying about soot. You wander on, emerging near the Bourse, the old stock exchange. The columns are severe, the plaza wide and glistening with half-melted snow. Nobody lingers here, not tonight. It feels like a stage after a show, props still in place, actors vanished, but around the corner something cozier stirs. The scent of roasted chestnuts carries you down Rue Réaumur, where a vendor with a cart tends his tiny fire under a red umbrella. His gloves are fingerless, his radio hums a low jazz number, and his nod of greeting is barely perceptible beneath layers of scarf. You buy a paper cone of chestnuts without saying a word, the transaction simple, smoky, and warm. You pop one into your mouth, burn your tongue, obviously, and grin through the pain. Worth it. The chestnuts steam in your mittened hands as you make your way down Rue Montorgueil, now nearly empty save for a few lingering cafe chairs stacked like pickup sticks. A cat crosses the street ahead, tail high, as if leading you on a quest. This street, by day, is all crusty bread and crowded terraces. But at night, it becomes something quieter, something gentler. You pass under garlands of string lights crisscrossing above, like stars caught in a web. Most of the boulangeries are dark now, but one, Storer, still glows faintly behind wrought iron grills. Opened in 1730, it's the oldest patisserie in Paris, and supposedly the birthplace of the baba au rhum. Yes, a cake soaked in rum. Leave it to Paris to make dessert flammable and poetic. You pause beside its window, staring at towers of cream, crusts glazed to a glassy sheen. The snow thickens around you, and for a moment you think of time, not in years, but in textures. The crisp of a croissant, the bite of winter wind, the hush of snow on cobblestones. You turn south now, led not by street names but by rhythm. Your chestnuts are gone. Only the paper cone remains, now crumpled in your pocket. Your limbs feel looser, your thoughts slower, the way they do when sleep begins to flirt at the edges of your vision. Rue Etienne Marcel guides you onward, past shadowy doorways and whispered conversations. A couple argues in soft French under a glowing doorway. A bike passes by, its tires slicing through the snow like skates. A baker, flour-dusted and wild-haired, leans out of a back door and tosses a crust to a waiting crow. You cross Rue de Louvre now, and the night breathes wider. The Seine is close. You can feel it, smell it, that cold mineral tang of moving water. And beneath it all, the heartbeat of a city that never truly sleeps, just dozes with one eye open. You take a deep breath, your lungs filling with winter and cinnamon and a hint of diesel. And you walk, not toward a destination, just toward the next warm light. You feel it before you see it. The breath of the Seine, heavier than snow, curling through the alleyways and across the pavement like a sleeping creature's exhale. The wind here has teeth, sharper than in the hills, laced with river chill and the distant clang of moored boats knocking gently against stone. You reach the Quai du Louvre, and there it is, the Seine, stretched wide like a silver ribbon unraveling through the city's sleeping body. Bridges rise like ribs across it, each one its own spine of iron or stone, each carrying centuries on its back. You pause on the Pont des Arts, a pedestrian bridge that feels more like a pause button than a thoroughfare. Beneath your boots, the snow lies in thin drifts, interrupted only by footprints of other quiet wanderers, lovers, loners, insomniacs, maybe a ghost or two. This bridge used to be weighed down with padlocks. Love locks, they called them. Thousands of couples snapped them on the rails and threw the keys into the Seine like a declaration. So many, in fact, that the city had to remove the panels in 2015 because the weight was threatening to collapse the structure. Historians still argue whether this was an act of preservation or a cold, bureaucratic erasure of collective romance. You rest your hands on the smooth railing and lean out over the water. The current is strong, even in the dead of night. It hurries along like it knows too many secrets and doesn't want to linger anywhere too long. Your breath clouds the air, then vanishes, as if the river swallowed it whole. Downstream, the towers of Notre Dame rise like shadows, and beyond them, the black silhouette of Ile Saint-Louis curls in the middle of the flow like a quiet thought. You decide to follow the river. You have time. Paris isn't going anywhere tonight. You descend to the lower quay, where the old stone walkways hug the river like arms. Few come down here after dark, but you do. The snow is softer underfoot, untouched. The sounds of the street above are muffled, as if you've ducked beneath the city's consciousness. You walk east, past houseboats dusted in white. Some have strings of lights blinking in the windows, little signs of life bobbing gently on the current. One of them has a bicycle chained to the rail, its basket full of soggy baguette stubs and a half-eaten croissant. A seagull eyes you from the prow like it owns the deed to the river. A little further along, you spot a plaque set into the stone wall. It marks the high water level of the Great Flood of 1910, when the Seine rose over 8 meters and turned the city into a damp, dramatic version of Venice. Historians still argue whether Paris handled the disaster gracefully or just awkwardly sloshed its way through it in tall boots and mild panic. You keep walking, the weight of the river beside you a quiet comfort. Every few meters, a gaslight glows from above, its halo dimmed by snowfall, its beam catching in the flecks like stars on a snow globe ceiling. On a whim, you climb back up to the street and find yourself at Pont Neuf, the new bridge that is, of course, the oldest bridge in Paris. Completed in 1607, it was once considered marvelously wide and forward-thinking because it had sidewalks. Sidewalks? The absolute luxury. You cross it slowly, watching the island of Ile de la Cité unfold before you like a book's final chapter. To your left, the twin towers of Notre Dame loom, still scarred by the fire of 2019. Restoration work continues, the cathedral wearing scaffolding like a temporary crown. But even bruised, she is beautiful, timeless, defiant, a mainstream fact to hold on to. Notre Dame took nearly 200 years to build, starting in 1163. That's commitment. And still, a pigeon could undo it with enough droppings and ambition. You pass through Place Dauphine, the tiny triangular square nestled just behind the courthouse. Here, snow lies thick and undisturbed. You imagine daylight pétanque games and espresso-sipping regulars. But now, it's yours, all of it. You sit briefly on a bench. Not because you're tired, but because you want to. The buildings around you are old, yellow-lit, quiet. A dog barks once in the distance, and then even that sound disappears. You could fall asleep here. Maybe you are already. You stand again and continue eastward onto Pont Saint-Louis, the little bridge connecting the two islands. On your right, the river splits in slow, steady silence. On your left, the tip of Ile Saint-Louis curls toward you, inviting you in like a secret. You cross over and immediately feel the shift. This is not the same Paris. The island is hushed, its narrow streets lined with 17th-century mansions and shuttered ice cream parlors. Every door looks like it hides a novel, every window like it's watching you back. A fringe detail for your night walk. Ile Saint-Louis was once used to store livestock, cows, pigs, the works. Before it became prime real estate for diplomats and discreet celebrities, it smelled a lot more rural. Now it smells like snow and wrought iron. You pass a tiny shop with an ornate hand-painted sign, Bertillon. In summer, it sells the best ice cream in Paris. Now, it sleeps under a shuttered gate, and snow has gathered in the hinges. A snow cone no one asked for. You find a little stone landing at the edge of the island and sit down. The water laps near your boots, soft and indifferent. The only sound is the muffled murmur of the river and the low creak of a nearby barge shifting in its sleep. You let your eyes close for a moment. The cold kisses your cheeks, but it's not cruel. The snow is still falling. Paris is still breathing. You're not lost. You're exactly where you need to be. From the quiet edge of Ile Saint-Louis, you rise once more, dusting snow from your coat like a returning spirit. The city calls again, not loudly, but with the soft insistence of a candle flickering in a far-off window. You follow the gentle bend of Rue Saint-Louis-en-Lille, a narrow spine of old stones with shuttered galleries and apartments perched like sleepy birds above. Your footsteps are nearly silent now, softened by snow and the hush of the hour. One window is lit. A woman in a thick robe waters a single potted plant on her windowsill. She sees you, maybe. Or maybe she's staring into her own reflection, dreaming through the glass. You cross the Pont de la Tournelle toward the left bank, and the moment your foot touches it, there's a shift. Less regal, more bohemian. You're in the 5th arrondissement now, the Latin Quarter. Winding alleys, crooked signs, and bookstores that cling to life with the stubbornness of old cats. Rue du Cardinal Lemoine greets you with a half-lit tabac and a bakery still warm from the evening's final batch of pain au chocolat. You press your face briefly to the glass, more for the heat than the view, and grin at the trays of pastries like your window-shopping edible jewels. To your left, up a short hill, stands the imposing facade of the Pantheon. You head toward it slowly, the snow crunching louder now, the quiet here even deeper, as if the souls of the building's many residents are holding their breath. Voltaire, Rousseau, Marie Curie, Victor Hugo, all buried within, all forever watching over the city from beneath that domed stone crown. The Pantheon was once a church, then a mausoleum, then a church again, its identity as indecisive as a moody teenager. Historians still argue whether the building ever really found its true purpose. Tonight, its purpose is simple: backdrop, for your footsteps, for your thoughts. A quirky little detail: Foucault's pendulum hangs inside, gently swaying to prove the Earth's rotation. A giant clock hand tracing invisible circles in a space where time feels stuck. That's Paris for you, always both frozen and moving at once. You wander down Rue Soufflot, toward the Luxembourg Gardens. The snow has made it a wonderland. The formal symmetry of French landscaping is softened, blurred. Statues wear little white hats, benches are softened into puffy ridges, and the palace, yes, there's a palace, is aglow in amber light from its lanterns. Luxembourg Palace, once a royal residence, now houses the French Senate. It looks too pretty for politics, like someone tried to conduct government inside a very fancy music box. And somehow, it works. You duck under the ornate gate, surprisingly unlocked. The paths are unshoveled, but you don't mind. You walk carefully, slowly, a lone traveler in a snow-covered park. You find the famous Medici fountain, its cascading pools now stilled, rimmed with frost. The statue of Polyphemus looms above, forever peeking out at the sleeping lovers Acis and Galatea, sculpted into myth and marble. You stare at him and mutter, "Still creepy, bro," under your breath. He doesn't blink. Nearby, a trio of chairs are gathered around a frozen pond like they're in conversation. You sit in one, and for a moment, maybe more, you listen. Not for sound, for presence. You begin to notice what's missing. No sirens, no scooters, no click-clack of impatient heels. The city is on pause. And you? You're the one holding the remote. Eventually, your legs ask for movement, so you rise again, following Rue de Vaugirard out of the park and toward the 6th. Now you're in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, the spiritual home of intellectual rebellion and café philosophers who wore too much cologne and never paid their tabs on time. You pass Les Deux Magots and Café de Flore, those twin temples of existentialism. Sartre and Beauvoir used to sit here, plotting revolutions and sipping lukewarm coffee. There's still the faint scent of Gauloise in the stone, if you sniff hard enough. You don't sit. You walk on. The night is too perfect to pause. The streetlights catch the wet sheen on the cobblestones and turn it gold. Not metaphorically. Literally gold. Like a city made of quiet treasure. You round the corner to Rue de Seine and see a tiny bookstore still open somehow. The door is ajar, and a cat lounges in the window beside a stack of dusty volumes. Inside, the clerk is dozing behind the counter, mouth slightly open, one hand resting on a copy of Swann's Way. Of course. This is the Paris of your dreams. Even the unconscious clerks are literary. You don't go in, you smile, and keep going. Along the Seine again, now, passing beneath the arched shadows of Pont des Arts and Pont Neuf once more, but from the southern bank. Your eyes catch on the distant glow of the Eiffel Tower, its golden lattice hazy in the flurry. And then, a soft laugh escapes you. Because here you are, still walking, still not in bed, still letting Paris stretch you out like a lullaby on loop. You stop at a low wall, near a little bookstall closed for the night, its green wooden cover rimmed with snow. During the day, it's all maps and yellowing Baudelaire editions. But now it's a monument to stillness. You rest your arms on the ledge and stare out over the river. The Eiffel Tower sparkles on the hour, just once. You watch, and there it is, a cascade of light across its bones, glittering like champagne shaken into the stars. Paris is asleep. But not you. Not just yet. You linger a moment longer, breathing in the hush, that sweet metallic scent of snow on stone, of winter folding itself into corners. The Eiffel Tower's last sparkle fades into stillness, and the river, ever patient, murmurs below. But now your feet are pulling you southwest. Not toward monuments or boulevards this time, but into Montparnasse, the neighborhood that once hummed with avant-garde rebellion, with poets who couldn't pay rent but somehow always had wine. You pass through Rue de Rennes, once a street of cloth merchants, now lined with shuttered boutiques and glowing patisseries. Here the buildings are less palatial and more worn, leaning slightly inward like they're eavesdropping on your journey. Soon you see it, the Montparnasse Tower, rising abruptly from the low-lying neighborhood like someone stuck a stapler in a Monet painting. Widely considered one of Paris's ugliest buildings, it was completed in 1973 and loathed almost instantly. So much so, in fact, that soon after, a citywide ban was placed on buildings taller than 37 meters in central Paris. Historians still argue whether the ban was aesthetic policy or just a passive-aggressive insult to the tower itself. You chuckle softly. Even Paris has regrets. But look past the skyscraper. Just behind it lies the entrance to the Montparnasse Cemetery, a quiet forest of stone and memory. You wander in. Yes, it's open. Parisians trust that only the thoughtful or the dead are interested in cemeteries after midnight. Snow has softened the rows of headstones, turning crosses into white crucifixes, angels into muffled silhouettes. You walk the gravel path slowly, the air here weighty, like it's held tighter by the names written on these slabs of marble. Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir lie side by side, their tomb marked with lipstick kisses, metro tickets, and scrawled notes in at least 5 languages. You run a gloved hand along the top edge of the stone, half expecting a whisper to echo back. To your left, a tree creaks in the wind. A cat darts between graves like a flicker of thought, gone before you can focus on it. Somewhere deeper in the cemetery, someone has left a tiny Eiffel Tower replica at the base of a weathered headstone. You don't recognize the name. Maybe a forgotten artist? Or maybe someone whose only audience was a single soul who loved them enough to bring tribute in the snow. One tomb catches your eye, larger, grimmer than most. It belongs to Charles Baudelaire, the controversial poet who once described the city as a giant sponge for the drunkenness of humanity. A fringe tidbit, he tried to publish Les Fleurs du Mal in 1857, and 6 of the poems were immediately banned for indecency. In a delightful plot twist, those poems weren't legally republished until 1949. You whisper, "Too spicy for the 1800s," and move on. The snow thickens a little as you exit the gates. Your breath fogs the air, and your legs ache just slightly, not from pain, but from the length of this quiet pilgrimage. Still you press on. Montparnasse isn't done with you yet. You cut across a silent square and down a side street, drawn toward the dim glow of a tiny cafe that's still open. It's called Le Rose Noire, and it doesn't look like much. Fogged windows, a crooked chalkboard menu, a single bulb flickering like a heartbeat over the door. Inside, it's warmer than expected. A couple sits in the corner, wrapped around each other like old vines. A man with headphones sips espresso at the bar, his head bobbing to music only he can hear. The bartender nods at you. You nod back. You sit. You don't order anything. You just sit. Your gloves steam slightly. Your cheeks begin to thaw. The couple in the corner laughs. Low, soft, like they're trying not to wake the city. The espresso guy glances up, meets your eyes, then smiles like he's known you since yesterday. You don't talk. You don't need to. Paris is weird like that. It gives you what you didn't know you needed. After a while, you rise, nod again to the bartender, and step back into the snow. No bill. No questions. Outside, the sky is starting to change. Not quite light, but no longer deep night. A hint of violet creeps along the eastern edge, like the city is shyly preparing to open its eyes. You walk north now, past Rue de la Gaîté with its tiny theaters, past the shuttered neon of cabaret signs. This part of town never tried to be the Marais or the Latin Quarter. It's scrappier, full of past life echoes. There's a plaque near the Théâtre Montparnasse marking the place where Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot premiered in 1953. At the time, people walked out mid-performance, baffled. Today, it's considered one of the defining works of 20th century theater. Historians still argue whether Beckett was a genius or just really, really into silence and boredom. You pass a corner bakery beginning to stir to life. The scent of rising dough wafts into the cold. A promise of morning. A light turns on in an apartment above. A kettle screams somewhere. The city's gears are starting to turn. But not for you? Not yet. You've walked through the sleep of Paris, touched its stone skin, heard its secrets swirl in snow and steam, and now the next phase awaits. Montmartre is waiting. It's far, and uphill. But let's be honest, your legs have made it this far. What's a little more? You start your ascent toward Montmartre as the earliest light begins its slow creep over the eastern edge of the city. There's no sunrise yet, just a faint wash of steel blue softening the black. But it's enough to guide your steps. The snow glows faintly under your feet, like the city's dusting itself off after a long, poetic slumber. Rue Blanche stretches before you now, a sloping path lined with quiet bakeries, shuttered cinemas, and the occasional blue-enameled street sign that somehow always looks freshly painted. The only sound is your breathing. Slower now. Deeper. You've been walking for hours, yet something in the crispness of the morning air sharpens you rather than dulls you. You turn left onto Rue Lepic, and here's where the real climb begins. The buildings tilt slightly in, as if offering support. You accept it. There's graffiti here, tasteful by Parisian standards, mostly bold declarations of love, and the occasional spray-painted baguette with angel wings. You pass one tagged wall that simply reads, "Reste curieux." Stay curious. You smile. Message received. Halfway up the hill, you reach a small square, Place Émile Goudot, quiet now, though once the heart of Paris's artistic uprising. Here stood the Bateau Lavoir, a crumbling artists' commune where Picasso painted Les Demoiselles d'Avignon in 1907. The building partially burned down in the 1970s, but a plaque remains, quietly asserting its place in art history. Historians still argue whether the Bateau Lavoir was a true birthplace of Cubism, or just a particularly cold flat with good lighting. Either way, the spirit lingers. You swear you feel it. Maybe it's just the altitude getting to your head. The final stretch is steep. Rue Norvins, and then Rue du Chevalier de la Barre, winding and narrow, steps worn smooth by pilgrims, poets, and tourists who didn't realize the metro doesn't actually go all the way up. And suddenly, there it is, the Sacré-Cœur. White and glowing, the basilica sits like a quiet guardian above the city. The snow makes it more dream than building, its domes dusted like meringue, its arches like icing on a birthday cake for the world. You approach slowly, footsteps silent on the stones. There's no one else here. You stand at the top of the hill and turn around. And Paris, in all its soft, sleepy grandeur, lies below you. The Eiffel Tower is a golden toothpick on the horizon. The Seine winds like a ribbon of moonlight. The rooftops, blue-gray, pitched, and perfect, glint with the sheen of frost. And for a moment, you swear you hear the city exhale. You sit on the low wall near the lookout point, just beside the carousel now frozen in place. Even the horses seem to be dozing. You pull your coat tighter. The air is thinner up here, or maybe it's just the beauty making your chest feel tight. It's the kind of view that artists spend lifetimes chasing, the kind that postcards get wrong, because it's not just visual, it's emotional. You feel it in your ribs, and then, like magic, a bell chimes. A single, round, echoing note from inside the basilica. Just one. A reminder that even now, even in this frozen, snow-draped hush, life ticks on. You decide to head inside. The basilica's doors are heavy, but open. Inside, the scent of candle wax and stone wraps around you like an old coat. A few worshippers kneel in the shadows, barely visible. You find a wooden pew near the back and sit. Above the altar, the massive mosaic of Christ in glory watches silently, arms outstretched, eyes half-lidded, as if he too is caught somewhere between waking and dreaming. You stay for a while, not to pray, not to think, just to sit, to let the stillness work its quiet spell. A quirky fact, Sacré-Cœur's dome is made of travertine stone, which reacts with rainwater to secrete calcite. It means the basilica essentially cleans itself. Paris's biggest architectural flex? A self-scrubbing church. Eventually, you rise. You don't leave through the front. Instead, you duck out through a side door, onto a narrow lane behind the basilica, Rue du Mont-Cenis. Here, the village feel of Montmartre is more intact. Ivy-clad walls, crooked chimneys, houses that look too small for modern life, but somehow still perfect. You pass by the Lapin Agile Cabaret, once the haunt of poets and anarchists and that one guy who juggled flaming knives until he accidentally set someone's mustache on fire. True story. Probably. And then you find it. A little square. Le Consulat Café. The chairs are stacked. The lights are off. But it stands just as it always has. White and red facade, sloping windows, like a dollhouse that refused to be forgotten. You stand there for a while, then begin your descent, down the opposite side of the hill this time, toward the city once more. The rooftops below are beginning to glisten with morning. Not full daylight yet, just the hush before it. And something inside you quiets. The walk has looped you through time, through frost and stone, through laughter and loss. You realize the city hasn't changed, but you have. And in a few moments more, you'll reach the flat place where all hills end, and you'll keep walking, because why stop now? You descend from Montmartre slowly, your footsteps softer now, as if the hill itself is reluctant to let you go. The streets here are thin and winding, like the final strokes of a long letter. You pass Rue de Sole, flanked by weathered stone and stray ivy, and for a moment the city feels like a village again, intimate, worn, and quietly proud. The street leads you past the last working vineyard in Paris, Clos Montmartre. Tucked improbably into a hillside, this tiny patch of vines has survived everything from world wars to real estate developers. The wine it produces isn't particularly good. Most bottles are auctioned for charity rather than served. But its existence is a defiant whisper of Paris's rural past. Historians still argue whether the vineyard is a quaint anachronism or a necessary anchor in a neighborhood that risks becoming museum-like. You pause there briefly, imagining monks or peasants pressing grapes in the cold centuries ago, their boots sticky with juice, their futures uncertain, but their hands always busy. You wonder if they ever thought about the city that would grow up around them. Probably not. They were busy living, and isn't that the whole point? The road curls downward, past pastel houses and hand-painted shutters, and suddenly, the world opens up. You arrive at Place des Abbesses, a modest square now stirring awake. A boulangerie unlocks its doors. A flower shop sets out buckets of tulips and mimosa. The scent of baking and soil and possibility fills the air. You sit on a bench near the metro station entrance, one of the few original Art Nouveau canopies still standing, all iron curves and leafy motifs. It feels like a portal, and in a way, it is. Beneath it, the city's veins begin to pulse once more. But you're not ready for trains or tunnels yet. Not when Paris above ground still has secrets to whisper. You cross into Square Jehan Rictus, a small park tucked just beside the metro. At its heart is the I Love You wall, a mural made of deep blue tiles where I love you is written in over 300 languages. You scan for your own tongue. You find it. It feels small and vast all at once. A universal truth shrunk to handwriting, repeated until it becomes song. And just like that, the cold doesn't bother you quite as much. You rise again, letting your feet carry you eastward now, toward the Canal Saint-Martin, a quieter part of Paris, less photographed but no less poetic. The streets flatten here, and the snow thins underfoot. But your steps stay soft. The canal reflects the faint morning glow, its waters unmoving, like a mirror for the shy sky. You pass under cast-iron footbridges arched like spines. Lovers have tied padlocks to the railings, though fewer than before. Many were removed in recent years to protect the bridges. A quirky fact. The city didn't quite know what to do with all the removed locks, so thousands were auctioned off, and the proceeds went to refugee charities. Even discarded love has its uses. The canal feels like a different Paris entirely. There are no grand monuments here. Just trees leaning over the water, shuttered boutiques, and benches holding memories. A man jogs by in silence, earbuds in, breath misting. A woman walks her dog, both of them blinking into the new day. You pause at a lock, a metal gate, not a romantic trinket. The kind that raises and lowers water for passing boats. Of course, none are moving now, but you can picture it. Long flatboats slicing through in summer, guitar music from the decks, children waving from windows. It will all return. But right now, you're alone. And that's just fine. You wander further down the canal, past cafes that will open in an hour, past a statue of a reclining man you vaguely recognize as someone once important. You stop near a bridge and lean on the railing. Your hands are warm now, your coat damp from melted snow. You're not cold. You're not tired. You're just here. And for the first time tonight, you don't feel like a visitor. You feel like part of it. There's something beautiful in that. How a city like Paris, so storied, so loved, so photographed and mythologized, can still feel deeply personal. Like it's changing its story just for you. Like the shutters closed just a moment ago were open an hour before. Like the old man feeding pigeons earlier was once a boy kissing a girl on the same bench. Time doesn't pass here. It curls, loops, hums like a melody always on repeat. You take out your phone, not to check the time, not to post anything, just to capture a photo. But the moment defeats the camera. It always does. The light is too gentle, the mood too quiet. So you pocket it again and trust memory to do the work. A soft chime from a distant church bell tells you it's almost morning proper now. People will soon fill the streets again, and your journey through sleeping Paris is nearing its end. But not quite yet. Because one last turn, one final curve in the street is pulling you south. Toward the Marais, toward echoes of revolution, of salons and synagogues and silent courtyards. Your feet are ready. And so is the dawn. The Marais greets you like an old soul with a crooked smile. Mismatched stone, time-polished doors, streets that forget to go straight. You enter from the north, near Rue de Bretagne, where even the snow seems to soften in reverence. There's a hush here, not sleepy, but contemplative, like the quarter itself is reading a well-worn letter by candlelight. You pass beneath an arched entry and into a narrow passage lined with antique shops and shuttered galleries. In warmer hours, this is where voices drift out with the clink of espresso cups. But now, it's just you, your footfalls, and a solitary pigeon giving you a side-eye like it owns the place. To your left is the Musée Carnavalet, a grand old mansion turned museum of Paris's history. It's still closed, its wrought iron gates chained shut. But you know what's inside. Models of medieval streets, Marie Antoinette's hairbrush, faded revolution posters with fonts so dramatic they practically scream. Historians still argue whether these romanticized relics bring us closer to the truth or simply blur the lines between memory and myth. You stand there for a moment, wondering what they'll put behind glass from our time. Maybe just a phone, endlessly buzzing. Or a croissant emoji, gold-foiled. You take Rue des Francs-Bourgeois toward the heart of the district. Even the name, Free Bourgeois Street, feels cheeky. This part of Paris has always been caught between elegance and upheaval. In the 17th century, aristocrats built their stately hotels particuliers here. Then the French Revolution arrived like a dinner guest with a flamethrower, and suddenly those same courtyards held secrets, fugitives, and revolutionary tribunals. It's a neighborhood with great bone structure and a slightly haunted past. A quirky little truth. Beneath some of the courtyards here, archaeologists once found Roman remains, a soldier's buckle, fragments of a heated floor, part of an amphora still smelling faintly of olive oil. Paris is a layer cake of lives, and the Marais is one of its richest slices. You duck into Place des Vosges next, and if the city had a drawing room, this would be it. The square is perfect in its symmetry. 4 arcaded walls of pink brick and stone, framing a snow-blanketed garden. Even the trees, bare-limbed and dignified, look like they're waiting for spring in tailored coats. You cross toward the southeast corner, where a simple door leads to the former home of Victor Hugo. The author lived here for over a decade, writing much of Les Miserables under these very beams. Inside, there's a desk that feels holy, a chair with questionable upholstery, and letters he wrote by hand. Curling script, passionate ink. You press your hand briefly to the door, just to feel the wood. Maybe something lingers. From here, the Marais begins to shift. The polished courtyards give way to the old Jewish quarter around Rue des Rosiers. The buildings are snugger, the signage brighter, and the scent. Oh, the scent. Even this early, the fragrance of baked challah and fresh falafel drifts from behind iron grills. You pass a bakery where sugar glitters on pastries lined like little soldiers behind glass. A man inside sees you, nods once. That's all. No words needed. The snow is thinning now, just a delicate crust along the edges of the sidewalk. Paris is waking. A door creaks open. A woman steps out in slippers, throws breadcrumbs to a group of sparrows, then disappears again like nothing happened. The sparrows lose their minds in joy. Your path bends toward Rue Pavée, where a modern facade juts out. A geometric surprise. It's the Holocaust Memorial, stark and powerful in its simplicity. A quiet square, a wall of names, and behind it, archives that preserve the stories of French Jews deported during World War II. You stand there a while, not in sadness, but in respect. The silence here is full, heavy. It wraps around you like snowfall. And then, just beyond it, another contrast, another bend in the story. You cross Rue de Rivoli and enter Ile Saint-Louis via the Pont Louis-Philippe. This small island in the Seine is often skipped in the guidebooks, overshadowed by its sibling, Ile de la Cité. But it's here, on these cobbled streets, that the city slows again. The river flows on both sides now. Dark, calm, sure of itself. You walk along Quai d'Orléans, admiring the stately facades, the frost-silvered balconies, the soft lamp glow in early risers' windows. Every building seems to be listening. Historians still argue whether the island was originally settled for strategic reasons, or simply because someone thought, let's build homes on this giant rock in the river. Either way, it worked out. The real estate now costs more per square meter than most dreams. You reach the very tip of the island, Square-Bory. It's a triangular park, usually bustling with children and dogs, now entirely your own. You sit on a bench facing the Seine. Behind you, Notre Dame rises, its silhouette bold against the pale canvas of dawn. Even after the fire, even in scaffolding and recovery, the cathedral stands with the posture of a survivor. You stare at its towers, thinking of Quasimodo and bells and every childhood book that made you long for this exact bench. You breathe in slowly. The air smells like ash, snow, and river water. It smells like memory. And here, you feel the full weight of the night. Everything you've seen. Rooftops, bells, statues, stairwells, bread ovens, whispers in alleys. It all comes to rest in this moment. Like a snow globe finally settling after hours of gentle shaking. The city no longer feels distant. It feels like it's holding you. You sit there until the sky turns pale gold. And you know, it's almost time. But not quite. You rise slowly from the bench in Square-Bory, as if peeling yourself away from a dream that knows you by name. The sky above Paris is no longer the soft gray of night, but a pale blush that promises warmth, even if it doesn't deliver right away. The snow on the ground has surrendered into slush at the edges, puddling near storm drains, streaked with tire marks and morning footprints. You walk west now, crossing Pont Saint-Louis. The bridge connects the islands like a thought bridging memory. And now. A lone accordionist sets up near the middle, his fingers stiff in fingerless gloves, his smile unwavering. He plays softly, notes floating behind you like mist. And yes, it's La Vie en Rose. Because of course it is. You smile, Not because it's cliché, but because it's perfect. Your feet take you onto Ile de la Cité, the ancient heart of the city. You're walking on history now, layers of it. Under these stones lie remnants of Lutetia, the Roman settlement Paris once was. Beneath Notre Dame, archaeologists found remains of a Roman temple, proof that even the sacred is built atop the sacred. Historians still argue whether that temple was for Jupiter, Mercury, or some forgotten local deity with a thing for weather and livestock. The cathedral looms ahead, majestic, even half-draped in scaffolding. You approach slowly, respectfully. The square is quiet, with just a few pigeons doing their eternal shuffle. The front doors are closed, but you don't need to go inside. The magic is already here. It's in the way the gargoyles stare out as if they're pondering your grocery list. It's in the soft gold light pooling behind the stained glass. It's in the hush that settles in your chest when you look up at the twin towers and feel small, but not insignificant. You touch the cold stone of its wall. It feels older than time and smoother than snow. From here, your route bends south across Pont-au-Double and into the Latin Quarter. The streets are narrower here, more playful, less concerned with their own reputation. Cafes begin to stir. A barista flips chairs down from tables. Someone curses at a stuck scooter. The world is waking up, and you're already ahead of it. You meander down Rue Saint-Jacques, one of the oldest streets in Paris. It once marked the main Roman road south, literally the spine of Lutetia. Quirky fact: beneath your feet, deep underground, is a network of ancient quarries that fed the city's stone addiction for centuries. Some say there are still uncharted pockets down there, tunnels where nothing breathes but echoes and time. You pass an old bookshop with cracked spines pressed to its fogged glass. You want to go in, but you know if you do, you'll never leave. And this story is almost done. You arrive at the base of Rue Mouffetard. It's a market street, sloping downward like a smile. Here, baskets of oranges are being unloaded. The scent of citrus cuts through the frost. A cheese vendor arranges his wares with priest-like reverence. You walk slowly now. You don't want this to end. At the bottom of the street, you stop near Place de la Contrecarpe. It's a small circular plaza, hemmed in by cafes and watched over by shuttered windows. Hemingway lived nearby, back when he was broke and the world was young. His apartment had no running water, but it did have a view of the rooftops, which, honestly, is a fair trade. You sit at one of the outdoor tables, even though the chairs are still cold. A waiter in a black apron doesn't even blink, just sets down a small espresso like you've been doing this for years. And maybe you have, because you've walked through the heart of a city, not just made of stone, but of memory and contradiction. You've seen where revolutions began, where hearts were broken, where poems were written on napkins and thrown in the Seine. You've walked from hill to hill, rooftop to river, past ghosts and saints and silent gardens, and you've made it. Paris is no longer a postcard. It's a story you're inside of now. And it's time to close the book, but not without a wind down. So now, as the sky brightens fully and the hum of morning becomes a low lullaby, you let the stillness settle in your limbs. Your body feels a little heavier, your breath a little slower. That gentle fatigue, that soft ache behind your eyes isn't exhaustion. It's contentment. It's the weight of wonder finally putting down its bags. Picture the Seine now, sliding past its bridges, carrying centuries with it. Picture the rooftops you passed, those tiny chimneys, the sleeping cats in windows, the golden spill of lamplight turning blue. Picture the snow, not as cold or wet, but as a quiet invitation. A hush. A velvet curtain on a long, gentle night. The city fades not into silence, but into softness, Even the gargoyles close their eyes. Even the old man with his baguette pauses, then vanishes down an alley. And you, lucky traveler, dream-walker, midnight flaneur, you have nowhere to be, no trains to catch, just the warmth of your blanket, the hum of your fan, the slow dance of thought slipping into sleep. Let your mind hold on to one last image. Maybe it's the wall of love in Montmartre, or the snowflakes on Place des Vosges, or the way Notre Dame stood tall against the dawn. Let it melt slowly. Let it stretch long. Let it go. Sweet dreams, my friend.